Welcome to Living Your Greatness. Each episode, we bring on great people to inspire you to achieve your greatness. We discuss topics all related to health and wellness. Listen to world-class stories, learn valuable lessons, and turn knowledge into action. It is now time for you to unlock your inner greatness. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Living Your Greatness. This is your host, Ben Mummy, and today we have a new guest to the show, and his name is Mike Clay. Mike is a vocalist and a songwriter born and raised in Montreal, the leader of Clay and Friends and the writer of Going Up the Coast. Apart from Clay and Friends, with whom he tours internationally, he also co-writes extensively for other artists. So Mike, great to have you on the show today, especially because you and I go way back as well.
We do. I remember fighting you in a swimming pool way back.
That's it. So for those who don't know, Mike and I used to be water polo players, and we used to play in the West Island where we kind of grew up with pools. And then from there, we transitioned for winter clubs, and then we played Quebec and some other teams after that. So Mike, I kind of want to just kick off this episode. Tell us more about yourself. Where did you spend your formative years growing up in Canada, and what inspired you to become a vocalist and a songwriter?
I mean, I think water polo is a really interesting starting point. It's a really hard sport, and like you said, we did it at a competitive level. It really brought in values of, playing in a team and having a common goal and working hard at something that even if you wake up one morning and don't feel like doing it on that day, you really have to strive it, whether it's not for you, it's for your team. So those are kind of values I tried to keep with me. When I finished a CEGEP, I went to a private CEGEP and got into a law school and university. And I kind of had this friend who was at the complete opposite side of the spectrum. He had just crossed Canada by bike and come back at 17 or 18, whatever age I was when I finished CEGEP. It's all kind of blurry in my mind. But he was like, "Hey man, I'm heading out to Australia. If you want to come hang out before you go to law school, it could be a fun adventure." And both my parents are immigrants. I'm also the oldest person in my family. And so when I told them I was going to Australia, they were obviously not pleased at all after all the sacrifices they had made, which is very understandable. But that 1 month stint turned into almost like a 2-year trip. And I never went to law school. But what I did do is I found something I was really good at, or I saw myself becoming better at. So while I was there with my friend who was called Alex, he kind of had this mind state where he said yes to pretty much everything. And, there was definitely a bit of white lies. And let me give you a context. Like, we'd get picked up hitchhiking, for example, because that's how we got around. And the person would be like, "Hey, you guys looking for some work?" And Alex would go, "Oh, yeah, sure. We're looking for some work. Have you guys ever built a fence?" And he'd just say, "Yep." And then he'd show up and kind of Google around and YouTube and always do an amazing job. And what I took from that is not the little white lie scheme, but it's more the fact that you really kind of have the power to do whatever you set your mind to. And so through this little adventure, we ended up picking fruit, which was way harder than water polo. You have to wake up so early. It's grueling work. And it was just not for me. And I ended up seeing some people play music in the street, which, at first glance doesn't seem too glorious. But they seemed like they were having a great time, a greater time than I was picking fruit. Let me tell you that much. So as a joke, I went to see them and I was like, "Hey, I'll hang out with you guys and, contribute to this thing you're doing." And they were like, what can you do? And I was like, "I can rap." And they're like, what are you talking about? You can rap. And I couldn't rap at all. But having spent so much time around this guy, Alex, started doing it. And it was a late night, super entertaining thing. So people were coming home from pubs or bars in Australia and they would just kind of play music. So I would pick people walking by and be like, "Hey, dude, over there, I don't really like your hair," which is obviously the worst rhyme in the world, but you do that for 6 hours a day for a year traveling around the country, and you kind of get a feel for this craft that turns into songwriting. So that trip kind of gave me that power to, well, it kind of seems I'm enjoying this. Why don't I put more time into it and see what could happen? So when I came back to Montreal, kind of jumped into making music. There was never really another choice, a plan B. I'm kind of proud to say I've never really had a job. I've never worked for anybody. I've always kind of been my own boss. And now I work with my best friends in the world, and I've built like an awesome team around me. But this whole journey started for me kind of going pretty much against the grain from day one and doing everything everyone told me not to do. I was pretty much told from the jump, like, you're throwing your life away. But it felt good, and I trust my gut. I still do to this day.
Absolutely. No, for sure. Yeah. Taking that leap is not always easy, right? Like it could be, there's a lot of fear, a lot of unknown. Get like from exterior views or opinions, right? Family or friends who do care about you. Hey, like, are you sure? Like you're young, all that stuff. But at the same time, it also could be your biggest opportunity, right? And going outside of our comfort zone, I think, to anything, whether that's a dream of, opening up a cafe one day, or kind of like you guys, going to travel, as well as pursue some passions that maybe you didn't know about, and then bringing that back here and continuing it. So thanks a lot for kind of sharing like your story there, Mike, because it's always cool to hear about any type of person in whatever passion that they really love to do, to hear how it kind of started, what kind of sparked that first, energy or kind of experience. Right. So I appreciate that.
To kind of bounce off of it, we kind of went, so we were just talking before this podcast started about, we just played one of the biggest venues in Montreal back to back and sold out shows. So it's like 5,000-6,000 people that came to see us. When I got back from that trip, I was like, well, I want to play some music. How do you play some music in front of people? I'm going to go see a venue, knock on their door and be like, hey, I would love to play here. And they looked at me like, who are you? No Facebook page, no released music. And I was like, no, I swear I can really do this music thing. And they were like, cool, we can give you a Wednesday night once a month. And we filled it up night after night. So it's just really something I kind of, to this day, like, I keep writing it down, Japan 2023, because I'm going to go to Japan in 2023. Hasn't happened yet. I don't know how, but yeah, speak it into being.
Definitely having a vision is key, and also experimenting, right? Kind of like you said there, right? Like knocking on different doors, seeing different venues. And, you had also shared earlier too, that even, there was a smaller venue down the street, a couple doors down. There was about 50 people at the time. And then now, kind of like you just said, you had these two bigger events, at Telus Theater, with all these people now who know Clay and friends. And
they sing the words. Like, we literally like strum two chords, and it's like, I could literally just hold out my microphone, and it's not for like one song, it's for the whole show. So it's incredible to see that, because we did something that we were passionate and felt authentic about, that it resonated with a bunch of people that, I guess they feel some type of way about it, whether it makes them excited or they lived memories with the music in their own lives. It kind of belongs to them now, and it's meaningful. So that's probably the most special part of it all.
Absolutely. No, for sure. I think like that process too, right? You talking about like, you weren't just at this level where you are right now. There was kind of a process of getting there. And it's actually something that I want to highlight, because I remember almost a decade ago, this was like 2013, and Mike and I knew each other, and you actually wrote me on Facebook and you were like, hey, like, just launched my first album, as well as my Facebook page.
Smash the like button.
Yeah, you're like, could you like the page? Could you promote it? And then all of a sudden, I think it was even like 3 years later, there was like, updates of albums, and obviously, hustling and had grit and messaging me there. But it obviously took courage, for you to make that step, right? For following your passion, because again, kind of like that whole process, there's wins, but there's also failures. It's a roller coaster, right?
A super interesting point where it's like, if you pick a liberal job, like someone who's like a teacher or a lawyer, there's so many role models and a path you can follow. And obviously you can diverge once you're in it, but there's kind of an outline. When you think about music or artists in general, and the artists most people look up to, they have already achieved success, and they all have taken a completely different path. Like, literally, no one has the same story twice. So it's really hard to kind of find a model to look up to, like, oh, this person did this, and I will try and imitate this until I can find my own path. So, you're talking about grinding and hustling, and I think that's literally up to a certain point where we found people that were interested in our craft and as committed to it as us, where we were kind of just, following our gut day by day and seeing what happened. Not having any models for a really long time to call, even for, hey, someone just gave me this contract, what do you think of it? Or, oh, is this a good payout for this venue? These are all things I learned on my own. Like, I booked our first tour in Europe. I sent 1,000 emails. 1,000 emails. I'm never doing that again in my entire life. But now I have knowledge of how to book a tour, how to coordinate it, how much a show is worth, how much you pay each musician, how to write an Excel. Not that I do it. I have an agency that does it for me now. I have an agency that does it for me here, another one in Europe. But just to say that we kind of, every step of the way, we really walked it ourselves. No one kind of gave us anything on a platter of gold. And I'm happy because I'm a ghostwriter. As you mentioned at the beginning, I worked with a ton of super successful artists, and a lot of them have had a journey that has been much more express, and all power to them. But you can definitely tell that there are lots of things they take for granted. And I, for one thing, do not take this life for granted at all, because I'm part of a very small percentage of people that I get to make people jump around and sing for a living. It's amazing. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And you're also able to help people, even on a daily basis, right? Like, I actually want to bring up a story, but I think then it was like, let's say a couple years later from, you last writing me, like in 2016, and it was 2018. And I was around that time, I was actually living in Ottawa. So I was visiting Montreal, and I happened to be in a thrift shop in St. Henry. And I heard music being played, and I was like, oh, I think this is Clay and Friends, but I wasn't sure, And all of a sudden, like, I have a chat with the owner, and she's like, oh my God, this is my favorite group. Like, I always play them every day. Like, St. Henry, like, just like the whole community here, just like loves Clay and Friends. And
That's so
anyway,
tight.
she was going on and on and on. And so right away, it made me, kind of think like, oh, this is so cool how, like, I saw this person, back in 2013 start up something like this and not know where they were going, kind of like you said. But then over time, you kind of vision, you kind of make mistakes, you learn all that stuff, your failures, your successes. And then next thing in 2020, I see, okay, now Mikey's going to the Jazz Festival and Osheaga and these big venues, which are huge, by the way, in Montreal. If you're not from Montreal or even worldwide, a lot of people come from the States, worldwide. So a question that I was wondering is, like, I know there's probably a lot of highlights from this, like journey, like the last decade. What is one highlight that stands out to you?
Oh man, give me one sec. This one's easy. That's an easy one, man. We got a gold record, man. You see this? This is a real gold record.
That's awesome.
It's a gold record for a song. This is a really crazy story. Usually when you get a gold record, you kind of, and don't get me wrong, like I said, there's all kinds of ways to get a gold record. We got it organically. So we didn't have a promotion budget. We didn't have management, booking. We literally just put this song out, and people liked it so much that it ended up through the algorithm, through Spotify, to just blowing up. We had this like K-pop superstar in South Korea that obviously I don't know and no one in the band knows, go on live. It's the equivalent of Drake pretty much over there, just kind of going on live TV and being like, my favorite band is Clay and Friends, and I love this song Going Up the Coast. And so it just, all these things kind of happened in life, I guess, and gave us a gold record. Now I've, there's a few plaques here, a few other like platinum and gold things, but that's the first one we've gotten from Clay and Friends. And that song comes from me. It's literally, the hook is about me bumming around and hitchhiking and those traveling days. So yeah, I'm really happy that those experiences kind of translated into, not just that tangible object, but I swear to God, when we start that bass line, you see people light up and it means something to them. So yeah, man, that's definitely one of the biggest achievements yet.
That is something to be proud about. And I think it's crazy whether it's a small win or a big win when it happens, right? And that's definitely, a big win, right? So to cherish that and to be proud, to be proud of it. And you know what? It actually makes me think, that was definitely a hit. It's a song that I like listening to if it's a sunny day. But I also know last November, Clay and Friends released a new single, which was called Bouge Ton Thang.
Nailed it.
And I know it has more than 1 million plays across all the music platforms. I've heard you talk on another podcast a little bit about it. But for our listeners right now that don't know, how did this become so popular, or what type of experience of the song did you want fans to kind of feel? Do you mind just talking a little bit about that?
That's a great question. So in Quebec, there's something really strange where typically French music and English music is very segregated, and I have this awesome opportunity where my mom was Francophone, my dad was Anglophone. And so I grew up mostly listening to English music and not really listening to a lot of French music. And, now that we've put out some music that has had some sort of success, I got me to think like I would love to be able to offer French music that I think is dope to people that are going through the same experience I went through. Just growing up in Quebec and not finding any French music they can relate to, they can bounce to, they can be with friends and just, oh yeah, I know this cool French band. It's just I had such a hard time looking for it. So I wanted to make a French song that I could groove to, but that I loved. I find so much French music, and hats off to everybody listening to everything, is just cheesecake. I have such a hard time listening to it. And so with Bouge ton thing, I had this vivid dream about this because we were obviously digging to try and find references or things that have been done in the past that we could bounce off of. And one of the names that kept coming up was Robert Charlebois. And I'm sure even if you've never heard his music, you'd see his face. And he's one of those like iconic figures in Quebec. At one point he had a massive afro and he kind of crossed over to the States with French music. And so I had this vivid dream with him and I kind of kicking it in a bar. And he offers me some gin because that's what I drink. And I was like, wow, this seems very real. And the conversation ended with him going, Mike, bouge ton thing. And so I got up, and I do this often, and just recorded a voice note at 3:30 in the morning of me going, Robert Charlebois, bouge ton thing. And then falling asleep and waking up and being like, oh, I know exactly what this is about. And then just the next day, kind of we do cottages together. So we drive up north or west or east to a cottage and kind of lock up for 10 days and try and make as much music as we can. And the first idea that we did at that cottage was Bouge ton thing. And it's just awesome to see, that song has, I think it's up to like almost 2 million plays across platforms now, and it's still playing on radio. Here it's been synced to a bunch of commercials. I know RBC has just synced it for their new rollout of their campaign. So it's awesome for us to see that French music has crossed over not only in Quebec, but California and Australia. And, we have listeners in Russia and Mexico. And it kind of goes to show, like, if it's got the right balance, like the language ain't a thing, the message and the soul just still gets through.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because there could be beats, that sound good in a song or a good voice, right? But then if there's a meaning behind a song too, with the words, and if you have all those ingredients, I think it really, really stands out, right? And I find it's funny that you were talking about how, like, just in general, like, a lot of French songs that used to be harder, right? Like for attention wise, right? Across like the world. But now you're starting to see a lot of artists do that. And another artist, which I had seen actually earlier this week, was Bon Entendeur, and they're from Paris, but they kind of stood out by, all these well-known people from France. They've integrated voice clips, and then also like, just like in terms of like DJ set and all that stuff, they've obviously found also some ingredients where it's really good vibes, right? Really good music.
It's distinctive for sure. Like they've really, like, you hear them and it's them. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. It was cool to see, like, from the crowd. Obviously, a lot of people were from Montreal, but it was interesting to see that I met some people that were English, didn't know any French, but they loved the music because of all those reasons.
Awesome. That's awesome. And that's one of the reasons I love music so much. To me, it's the gift that keeps on giving. For me to be able to write for myself, for other people, I constantly am obliged. It's the only thing I have to do in my life is consume culture. I have to read a lot. I have to listen to a lot of music. I have to watch a lot of movies. I have to go to as many museums as I can, because it's me digesting all these things and bouncing off of it and creating something new. So music has kind of been a gateway for me, being a junkie to culture in a sense, which is, I'm okay with that addiction. You know what I'm saying? I'm okay with that ritual of continually consuming culture. So I find Bon Entendeur is an awesome example. They have put me on not only to amazing music, but amazing iconic figures in French philosophy or French acting or French directing. So it's really great to see that, as you said, it breaks down those barriers of English, French, Russian. It doesn't matter if there's something for it that makes you bounce. Well, I feel like people are more receptive to jumping into the story and being committed to the artist. You bought a ticket, you went to the show, you bounced. We're talking about it right now, so they must be doing something special.
For sure. So Mike, something that I want to go to next is you've collaborated with many talented music artists like Jay Scott, for example. What do you believe separates a good artist from a great artist?
I'm going to quote one of my exes on this. I feel like timelessness is one of the things that separates good artists that are popular at a certain point of time for a multitude of factors. Maybe the people they know, maybe this one song they put out, but somebody that manages to kind of resonate, reinvent themselves, stay active and compelling to themselves and to the people listening, I think kind of makes them great. But on a more current tip, something less esoteric, I feel like the greater artists I've worked with are the ones that are the most open-minded and willing to collaborate and like we were talking about it before, just step out of their comfort zone and try new things. It's just that willingness to be themselves in another format. I think that's something that enhances their chances of timelessness, because if you're able to get into that mind state time and time again and push yourself out of, well, I know these notes are going to work, but everybody knows these notes are going to work for this person. Let me try these notes, or let me try and grab an influence from this and there. To me, it just kind of, I find it gives them a chance to potentially be timeless. You know, I don't know what your great references are, but I'm, you know, if I look back at my records, I've got, oh yeah, Marvin Gaye still works. I DJ a bunch. I throw on a Marvin Gaye record. Everybody's boogieing and dancing, and it works as a dance floor thing. But he's an iconic songwriter and producer. Manu Chao is another great example. You know, they've managed to reinvent themselves time and time again while keeping their imprint, showing their growth. I'm thinking about Mac Miller as well. You know, he went from being a backpack frat rapper to someone who was able to open up his soul through, you know, and I don't want to sound like a, well, what's your astrological sign or whatever, but I mean in the sense that it's soulful, and he manages to take things that are sometimes hard to describe and put them in these short sentences that people everywhere around the world can hear, and that's, you know, it resonates with them, and they can say, that's me. Somebody else feels the same way I do. You know, they can gravitate to those stories. So that's one thing that definitely sets people apart. In all the sessions I've been in, there are people that come in and are there to execute and do the same thing over and over again because they know it works. And all praise due. You know, if it's not broken, don't fix it. But I'm not in this industry to do the same thing over and over. People call me all day jam because I love jam, but I also love to jam. And I just love trying new things, new combinations. It makes me feel alive. And I know that if it makes me feel alive, it'll make other people feel the same way when they listen to it.
Yeah, no, I think you brought up some great points there. And I also think too, you also had a lot of great examples there, you know, from like the music industry. One word that you did use, which caught my attention, was being innovative, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what recommendations do you have for someone to foster, you know, innovation in like the music industry?
I feel there's kind of this taboo in art, that people feel bad being inspired from somebody else. Nobody wants to say like, oh, where'd you get that idea from? But from every single book I've read about art, whether it's a painter or a sculptor, or the first thing they're going to talk about is, I did this trip, went to see this artist, brought this back, tried to imitate it as many times as I could until I made it my own. And to me, that's what art, and even more specifically, hip hop literally is. So to get back to your question, my point is not being afraid to borrow and reinvent and recycle and do patchwork and reimagine things that already exist. And I'm not saying to copy, that's completely different, but just to be open to reinterpreting things, because people have this illusion, which creates a massive amount of pressure in like, I have to make something that no one has ever done before throughout the existence of mankind. It's like, you might be that person, you know, there are those people. But I feel like most art, that great art that resonates now and that does well and that people gravitate towards is some sort of reinterpretation, reinvention, a bouncing off of something that has already been done. So yeah, that would be my 2 cents. Not be afraid to read a bunch, listen a bunch, go see what other people are doing. And in every facet, you know, like I went to see a rap show last night. I went to see Ishan, who's a very well-known French rapper. And I'm not the biggest fan of his music, but I love his style, the way he dresses, the way he moves on stage. So I went to that show not to necessarily pick apart the musical performance, but maybe to see if I could learn from his style. You know, I'm coming home with that little piece of info. Or when I go to a museum, maybe it's the description of one of the paintings that will strike me in the word choice and that I'll end up using in a hook. So it's like inspiration. I don't want to sound like a Tumblr quote, but it is literally everywhere, man. I'm a compulsive writer So every time I get, it's actually like I guess the closing to this circular answer would be, when you do get an idea, don't be afraid to write it down. And obviously I'm a songwriter. I'm kind of preaching what I do, but ideas come and they go, and it's hard to summon inspiration. Like, be inspired now is a hard task. It's a muscle you can work at, but I think it's much easier to catch it when it's there, write it down, so that if you're not, you have those sparks handy, and phones make that so easy nowadays. So those would be my 2 cents, to really be as inspired as possible by everything around you, and go out of your way to kind of be able to consume new things. And then when you do, make sure you write down how it makes you feel, or what you see yourself doing with it, because or else it just comes and it goes.
Yeah, no, for sure. When you were talking about just inspiration, but also learning from others and not being afraid to use that to get yourself better. And I find that huge, because even like, for example, I do some writing as well. And sometimes I'll just get an idea from like a conversation with a friend, a family member, a colleague. And I'll be like, wow, that was like awesome discussion. And like that idea, it has to be shared. Other times it could be, from, in a podcast, where there's a nugget that I heard and I'm like, oh my God, no one's spoken about that before. Right. So it can come from within, our own ideas, but you can also take different pieces and kind of like you said, it's not copying, but inspires you to then get a idea that's connected and portray it in your own way with your own style.
I can give you a really tangible example of this. We put out a song on the last record, not on Agua, on a Gruyad, and I was at this. I don't love going out to parties. It's not really my favorite thing to do. But I did end up going to this party, and there were a lot of people with blue check marks beside their name at the party. And I'm not really one to get into it, but the amount of ridiculous sentences I heard in that evening, I just took my phone out and started writing them down. People were just saying these absurd things that outside of that context would make no sense. You wouldn't let them say things like that. And that song became that, the collection of all those discussions became the song called Okay. That's the name of the song. And it's all these one-liners that people said. They were literally just floating around. I was with a friend, and we just kept on looking at each other like, I can't believe that person just literally said that. You have this TV personality saying something like, well, I'm not racist, but, and it's like, no, X, you can't say that. So that was the whole point of the song, of just kind of show how two-faced people can be. But also, like, just to get back to that example, inspiration is everywhere. It's one of my favorite songs to play live. People really seem to react to it, because everybody has been in that context where you're walking on the street and you overhear a conversation and you're like, what did that person just say? So I kind of flipped a situation that I really wanted no part in to something that was like, we actually left the evening with a song.
Crazy. Hey, it's crazy how like ideas can form, right? So I appreciate you for sharing that story. And Mike, I just want to move to my next question, which is, if you could go back and give your 18-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh man, I actually I think about this all the time. I wish I trusted myself more. A lot of this journey has been solo, and me kind of taking risks and kind of bringing my friends along with me. And then, when it works, everybody's happy. But when it doesn't, everybody's not so happy with you. But in the end, I've got a few gold records, selling out venues, touring internationally. And every time I trust my gut, whether it's in a musical endeavor or in a business venture, because I am an entrepreneur, I run a company with Clay and Friends, which, 15, 20 people gravitate in this business. So every time I trust myself, and I'm not saying I'm always right, and even if it's a mistake, every time I've trusted myself, something good has come of it eventually. Whether that mistake has led to something I could learn and improve, or led me to meet somebody that would give me some great advice and take me to a higher level, or get me to know myself. There's always kind of something to take from it. And there are days, no matter what, we were talking about it before, ambition is a double-edged sword. So there are some days that, even though there is success, I put myself in question, but it always comes down to that one thing of, really trusting myself and being open-minded to everything around me. I wish that when I had come back from that trip, I had dove even more headfirst into this, I think it could have accelerated my journey. And once again, I don't want to sound like Tumblr, but everything happens for a reason. And I'm happy I took the steps I did, because now I feel that in more of the business side of things, I'm more apt at running a business than somebody who's like, I'm really good at guitar and singing. I know how to do all kinds of things that are connected to that and that I enjoy so much as well. So yeah, that would be my 2 cents.
So it sounds like the theme I got out of that was follow your heart, right? Follow your heart, follow your passion, and good things eventually will come, right? So I appreciate that piece of advice. So Mike, as you know, like the purpose of this podcast is to inspire millions of people to achieve their greatness and enhance their overall personal well-being. So what is your definition of greatness?
Well, it's, for me, it's being able to wake up and do the thing I love the most. And I know that might sound very self-centered as something that's great, but let me kind of expand on it. I think everybody would be more inspired and more happy if they were surrounded by people that did just that. And so to me, greatness comes from doing that exact thing and being able to inspire the people around you to achieve that version of themselves. And it's not something that, it's not a switch you flick on and it's like, congratulations, you are now great. I think it's a lifelong process. And that's why some athletes stop competing at a high level, even though they still have years to go. The inspiration's gone, or some artists reinvent themselves, and that's okay. You know, they're listening to whatever their head and their heart is saying. But to me, that's what brings greatness, is somebody that's continuously able to do that no matter what scenario they're in. And you know it when you meet somebody that's great. You know, they give out this aura that's just contagious, and you leave floating on a cloud. And I've been so lucky to meet, whether it's in the music side of things or the business side of things, to meet amazing mentors that have just been super generous with their time and their advice. So yeah, I feel like the theme of kind of being very open-minded, listening, and trying to make the best of the people around you, you know, give the best of themselves.
Yeah. And I think that also goes with, you know, becoming like the best version of yourself, but kind of like you said, you know, being passionate about what you do. Right. And there's an expression that I've said before in this podcast. I really believe, you know, fire catches fire. Right. So if that fire keeps heating up, you know, eventually the momentum's going to kick in and it's going to continue to go, and then it will go really quick. Right. So finding things that you are truly in love with, you know, that light you up or that make you tick. So Mike, who is a future guest that you would like to see on this show?
On this show? Good question. I would love to see, I'm trying to think of like a musical figure that has really kind of opened my eyes to a lot of things. Okay, I know who I'll name. There's this guy called Richard Bynon. All right. And he's more of like he comes from a background of classical music and is now a worldwide known producer. And he is the person that has kind of opened my eyes to how to achieve success in the music industry and how much it is about everything we were talking about, but also navigating this industry that is filled with no models. So yeah, it's kind of, I'm tipping my hat to him, but he's, I look up to him, and I think he'd have a lot of very inspirational words, whether it's for people in the music industry or just trying to be the best version of themselves.
That's awesome, Mike. Well, I appreciate that name. I'll definitely add him to my list one day. You know, when he's on the show, I'll definitely be sure to let you know.
Nice.
And leaving off here, Mike, if my listeners want to connect with you online, where's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, I'm on all those platforms. I'm on YouTube, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Spotify. So I'm Mike Clay at All Day Jam. That's kind of my handle. My band Clay and Friends is everywhere as well. So if you want to look us up, it's Clay and Friends, and the music we make is La Música Popular de Verdun, and we're very proud of it.
Okay, cool, Mike. So you know what? I'll definitely be sure to put that in the episode notes. And I just want to take this last moment here to really thank you for your time. You know, thank you for being on Living Your Greatness. I'm sure my listeners got a couple of good nuggets there from you. I really want to thank you for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. It's really, really nice catching up. I really appreciate it. Thanks, man.
Thank you for listening to the Living Your Greatness podcast. If this show has added value, please subscribe, leave a rating, and make a review.